Dear viewers, the following stories are inspired by real events. However, the names of the characters have been changed to protect privacy. Story 1. Haunting on the Way Home. It was a cold autumn night in 1998. In rural Pennsylvania, we will call the main character Mark Olson. Mark, a young man of about 25 years old, had just finished a late shift at a factory about an hour's drive from his home. Mark was tiredly driving his old pickup truck on a deserted road. The clock on the dashboard showed 2:17 a.m. All around was darkness and the weak headlights of the car illuminating the road. Mark felt a little sleepy, but he knew he was about to reach home and lie down on a soft bed. While driving through a deserted stretch of road, surrounded by tall cornfields on both sides, Mark suddenly saw a figure standing on the side of the road. It was a woman, thin, wearing a long white coat. Mark was surprised. In the middle of the quiet night, how could someone be standing here alone? Mark slowed down and looked more closely. The woman seemed to be waving her hand, asking for a ride. He hesitated, since he had been taught since childhood not to stop for strangers at night. But seeing the woman's lonely and somewhat desperate appearance, Mark decided to stop. He rolled down the window and asked, "Do you need any help?" The woman approached the car, her face pale and her eyes dark. Her voice was hoarse. "Can you give me a ride back to town? My car broke down a few miles away." Mark looked at the woman. Even though he felt something was wrong, he opened the car door and invited her in. "The town is on my way home. Get in." The woman thanked Mark and quickly got into the passenger seat. Once the woman was seated, Mark started driving again. The silence in the car was terrifying. Mark glanced at the woman, but she just stared out the window, her face blank. He tried to make conversation. "What's your name? Where did your car break down?" The woman did not answer immediately. After a while, she slowly turned to look at Mark. Her face was still pale, but her eyes had a strange light, which made Mark feel cold. Her voice was soft. "My name is Sarah, and I'm on my way home." Mark felt that something was very unusual. He asked again, "Where do you live in town?" Sarah was silent for a long time, then slowly raised her hand. Her fingers were long and thin. Her nails were black. She pointed forward, into the pitch-black darkness. "There," she said, her voice shrill and haunting. Mark shivered. He felt a fear spread throughout his body. He knew he had made a terrible mistake. Mark felt a chill wash over the car. Even though the heater was still on, he tried to stay calm, looking straight ahead, but his eyes kept glancing at the woman sitting next to him. Sarah was still staring into the darkness, her bony fingers occasionally trembling slightly. The silence in the car was suffocating. Mark felt cold sweat break out on his forehead. He decided to break the eerie silence. "Miss Sarah, you said your house is up ahead. Where exactly do you mean?" He tried to keep his voice casual, but he couldn't hide the tension. Sarah slowly turned her head to look at Mark. Her face seemed even paler now, and in the dim light of the dashboard, Mark noticed that her eyes had no whites. They were just a deep, soulless black. A faint, emotionless smile appeared on her lips. "So close, you're almost there," her voice whispered, the sound like the wind whistling. Mark felt his heart stop. He stepped on the gas pedal, trying to drive faster. He wanted to get this strange woman out of the car as soon as possible. But no matter how much he accelerated, the scenery outside the window didn't seem to change. They were still driving on a deserted road, with tall cornfields on both sides. Suddenly, Sarah reached out and touched Mark's arm. Her hand was cold as ice and as dry as goosebumps. Mark pulled his hand back reflexively. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice full of caution. Sarah didn't answer. Her fingers tightened on his arm, her black nails digging into Mark's flesh, causing a sharp pain. Mark screamed, trying to push Sarah's hand away, but she seemed to have supernatural strength. He couldn't move his arm. Sarah leaned close to Mark's ear, her voice becoming shrill and sarcastic. "You stopped. You invited me in. Now you have to take me home." In a panic, Mark tried to steer the car to the side of the road, hoping to make Sarah let go. The car swerved violently and slammed into a roadside sign. The crash was deafening. The windshield shattered. Mark hit his head on the steering wheel, a sharp pain shooting down his spine. When Mark opened his eyes, he found himself still in the car. But Sarah was gone. He looked around. The windshield was shattered, and the car was badly damaged. But there was no trace of the strange woman. Mark gasped, trying to process what had just happened. He was sure he was not dreaming. With a terrible fear, Mark struggled to crawl out of the wrecked car. He stood up, looking around. He was still on the deserted road. But now, there was no cornfield. Instead, in front of him was an old cemetery. Gray-white tombstones undulating in the darkness. Mark shivered. He suddenly realized Sarah had taken him to her house. The story of Mark Olson and the mysterious woman on the way home was a chilling reminder of the dangers that could lurk behind a seemingly normal appearance. Sometimes the scariest things happen when and where we least expect them. Always be alert on deserted roads late at night, because you never know who or what is waiting for you. Story 2. A Night of Horror on the Farm. It was an evening in August 2000. On a remote farm near Hopkinsville, Kentucky. We will call the family that lived there the Johnsons. Billy Johnson, a middle-aged farmer, his wife Lisa and their 2 young children, were enjoying a peaceful evening after a hard day's work. Billy and Lisa had just put their 2 children, 10-year-old Kathy and 7-year-old Tom, to bed. They were relaxing in the living room, watching television and chatting about the day's events. It was pitch black outside, with only the chirping of insects. Around 9 p.m., Billy decided to go out to check on the cattle. He took a flashlight and stepped out into the quiet night. The air outside was a little chilly, and Billy felt an eerie silence envelop the farm. As Billy walked along the barn fence, he suddenly heard a strange noise coming from above. He looked up and saw a bright object hovering in the sky. The object had no clear shape, just a mass of bright light, moving very quickly and making no sound. Billy stopped, staring at the strange object in amazement. He had never seen anything like it before. He tried to think of a reasonable explanation, but couldn't think of anything. The object suddenly changed direction and flew straight towards his farm. Panicked, Billy rushed into the house, slammed the door, and locked it. He rushed into the living room, panting and stuttering to tell Lisa what he had just seen. I don't believe it. There's something flying in the sky. It's coming towards us." Lisa initially thought her husband was joking, but when she saw Billy's terrified expression, she knew something was wrong. The couple quickly woke up the children and gathered in the living room. They felt an extreme sense of unease and anxiety. Less than 5 minutes later, they heard strange noises coming from outside the house. There were scratching sounds, light banging sounds on the walls and roof. The entire Johnson family fell silent, holding their breaths as they listened. They felt as if someone or something was trying to break into their home. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the living room window. Billy and Lisa looked in that direction, startled. and were horrified to see a strange creature trying to climb inside. It was a small creature with silver skin, big round yellow eyes and pointed ears. It looked like a goblin or a scary alien. The whole Johnson family screamed in terror. Their night of terror had just begun. Lisa's scream tore through the quiet night. The strange creature at the living room window continued to try to pry open the door to get inside. Billy quickly pushed his wife and children behind him, grabbing a baseball bat to defend himself. The creature finally pried open the window and jumped into the room. It was small, only about a meter tall, with wrinkled silver skin and sharp claws. Its large, round yellow eyes stared at the Johnson family. Unblinking, "Get away from my family!" Billy yelled, swinging the baseball bat at the creature. The blow hit its body, creating a strange thud. The creature retreated a little, then quickly rushed towards Billy at an incredible speed. Billy tried to dodge, but the creature was too fast. It jumped on him, scratching his face and hands. Billy screamed in pain, struggling to escape the attack. Lisa ran to her husband's aid in a panic, hitting the creature's head with a flashlight. The creature fell to the floor from the sudden attack. Kathy and Tom hugged their mother tightly, crying out in fear. Billy quickly stood up, gasping for breath as he looked at the creature lying on the floor. It did not appear to be badly injured, and its yellow eyes were still staring at them menacingly. Suddenly, another noise was heard from outside. Billy and Lisa looked out the window and saw more of the same creatures approaching the house. They moved very quickly, climbing over the fence and heading towards the front door. "We have to hide," Lisa shouted. Billy quickly led his wife and children to the back door. They rushed out into the darkness, running as fast as they could towards the fields behind the farm. They heard the strange creatures chasing them, the scratching and screeching echoing in the darkness. The Johnsons ran without stopping until they reached their neighbor's house about a mile away. They knocked on the door and begged for help. The neighbor, Mr. Goodman, was initially surprised to see the Johnsons in such a state of panic. But after hearing their story, he quickly called the police. When the police arrived at the Johnsons' farm, they found no trace of the strange creatures. However, the scratches on the door and walls, along with the Johnsons' terrifying accounts, convinced them that something unusual had happened. The story of the terrifying night at the Johnsons' farm has become one of the most famous stories of strange encounters in Kentucky, and to this day, many people still cannot explain what really happened that night. Story 3. Calling from the Dark. It was a weekend night in October 2008. In a remote rural area of Minnesota. We'll call our protagonist Jake Miller. Jake, a 19-year-old college student, has just had a party with his friends in a town about 60 miles from home. Jake starts driving his Chevrolet Cavalier home around 2 a.m. He hasn't had much to drink, but he's still feeling a little tired after a night of partying. It's pitch black outside, and the deserted road is lit only by the car's headlights. About halfway through the drive, Jake realized he had taken the wrong turn. He wasn't sure exactly where he was, but he knew this wasn't the usual route home. Jake stopped on the side of the road, trying to get directions with his cell phone. However, Jake's phone had no signal. He tried to walk along the road for a while, hoping to find a signal, but to no avail. All he could see was darkness and tall trees, creating a desolate and eerie scene. Jake decided to call his parents for help. He remembered to bring an older cell phone in the trunk, which usually had better reception in rural areas. Jake got out of the car, opened the trunk, and found the old phone. Luckily, The old phone had a signal. Jake called his father, Tom Miller, and told him what had happened. He said he got lost somewhere on the way home and didn't know exactly where he was. Tom tried to calm Jake down and told him to stay in the car. He would try to help him. While waiting for his dad to arrive, Jake felt increasingly anxious. He looked out the window. The darkness seemed to be enveloping the car. He heard strange noises coming from the woods nearby. Rustling, branches breaking, making him feel like someone or something was watching him. About 15 minutes later, Jake's phone rang. It was his dad calling back. Tom said he had called the police and they were trying to locate Jake based on the phone signal. He told Jake to turn on his headlights and flash them continuously, so the police could easily find him. Jake did as his dad said. He turned on his headlights and flashed them continuously into the darkness. He felt a little relieved knowing that help was on the way. But at the same time, he still couldn't escape the feeling of insecurity and fear that was engulfing him in this desolate dark night. He had no idea that this phone call would be the last time his family would hear his voice. After Jake's last phone call, Mr. Tom Miller and the police quickly went to the area where Jake's phone signal was located. They found Jake's car on the side of the road, the headlights still on and flashing continuously into the darkness as he had told them. The car was not seriously damaged, but Jake was nowhere to be found. The police and Jake's family organized a large-scale search in the surrounding area. They searched all over the roads, fields and forests nearby, but there was no trace of Jake. During the search, the police checked Jake's call history. They discovered that after the call with his father, Jake had a call lasting about a minute with his girlfriend, Sarah. When police contacted Sarah, she said that Jake seemed very frightened during the call. He said he had seen something strange and scary in the woods. But before she could ask further, the call was disconnected. Sarah's testimony added to the unease and mystery surrounding Jake's disappearance. Why was he so frightened? What did he see in the woods? And why did the call end so abruptly? These questions remain unanswered. The search for Jake lasted for days, but to no avail. Police used dogs and helicopters to search, but still could not find any trace of the young man. It seemed that Jake had mysteriously disappeared into thin air. A few weeks later, when all hope seemed lost, the police suddenly received a strange piece of information. A truck driver who had passed by the area where Jake had disappeared that night reported that he had seen a man walking along the road around the time Jake called his father. The truck driver described the man as tall and wearing a dark coat. Strangely, the man appeared to be walking in the opposite direction of the town. This information opened up a new theory. Did Jake meet a stranger on the road and something bad happened? The police tried to track down the truck driver to get more details, but were unsuccessful. The truck driver seemed to have just been passing by and did not remember any other details. To this day, Jake Miller's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery. No one knows what happened to him after his last phone call. His car was found, but he himself was not. Many believe that Jake was the victim of an accident or some other crime. But there are also those who believe that some supernatural force intervened in this mysterious disappearance. In the years that followed, many strange stories have been told about the road where Jake disappeared. Several motorists have reported seeing a young man walking along the road at night. And when they stopped to help, the figure suddenly disappeared. These stories have turned a deserted Minnesota road into a creepy place, where the ghost of Jake Miller seems to still be wandering forever on the way home. The story of Jake Miller's mysterious disappearance is a chilling reminder of the terrible things that can happen in the dark. On deserted roads, sometimes, phone calls end up being the harbingers of an unforeseen tragedy. If you find this story creepy and want to hear more similar stories, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for listening.